We know that as Christians, we are commanded to give, be generous people. In Luke chapter 6, verse 38, Jesus said, Give. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, and poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. I'm a Christian. I want to please God. I know that giving pleases God. And later on in the same chapter, in chapter 12, we have this parable of the rich fool who has stuff. And I'm sure he gave, if, of course, this is a fictional character, but I'm sure he was someone who would give some. But this same type of character was also thinking about his own stuff. And he decided, what he was going to do? He was going to tear down his barns and build bigger barns. And then he was going to retire. And he was going to eat, drink, be merry, and his future was going to be set. But God said to him, You fool, this very night your life is demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? That's how it will be with the one who stores up treasures for himself and is not rich towards God. I am a Christian and I want to do what God says. I don't want to be like this rich fool. I want to be giving, but I also don't want to be giving so much that I make myself destitute. So the question that we have that every Christian must ask themselves is how much? How much should I give? And in the law of Moses, they were explicitly commanded to tithe, that 1/10 of everything that they had would go to the priests, to the Levites, and then 1/10 of the things that the Levites brought in, they would give to the family of priests. And that's how the religious system of government was established. Of course, that wasn't the only giving that the Jews were commanded to do. They were also supposed to not harvest the outside edges of their fields, so poor people or travelers could pick and eat when they were traveling. And if any food just naturally dropped on the ground, if you have a pear tree or an apple tree and some fruit falls on the ground, if you own the tree, you're not supposed to pick up the fruit off of the ground. That was for poor people to come and glean and to pick up for themselves. There were commands to give to other people more than just the 10%. But in the Old Testament, they have a hard and fast tithe, 10%. In the New Testament, we don't have an explicit percentage number that we are to give. But we do have some principles to guide us in how to answer this question of how much should I give? And that is going to be my attempt this morning, is to lay out some of these biblical principles. That way each one of us can make our own determination for ourselves in deciding how much should I be giving. Before we go in to further details of these principles, I want to give some disclaimers. First, this is not the church here begging for money, that we're just not giving well enough. We need people to be giving more because we have this extra new great need. Those may arise where we have an especially needy member of our church and we say, hey, we need to take up a collection to take care of this person, or we know of this great need in Africa, or we need a repair to our building, or whatever it might be. We may ask for a special time to say we do need more, but that's not the purpose of this lesson, and we're not in that situation right now. I personally have never counted money in the collection plate, and that is a decision that I've made a very long time ago. I don't know who the good givers are and the stingier people are. I'm not aiming this at anybody. I've purposefully kept from doing that. So if you feel your toes especially stepped on this morning, one, that's not where I'm aiming. I'm aiming for heart, but I'm not singling anybody out. Next, generosity is a bigger topic than just what goes into the collection plate. We certainly have authority to take up a collection for the work of the church here, and we'll look at that later on. But when we're talking about giving as Christians, there are more options than just giving in a plate. So if you come up with a percentage, whatever percentage comes up into your mind of what you purpose and you decide, then you have to decide of that percentage, how much of it goes to a collection plate versus how much I may send directly to preachers. We have scriptural precedent of the church in Philippi sending money directly to Paul when he was preaching so that he wouldn't have to make tents. He could just spend all of his time preaching. And that's what I am supported. I'm supported both by this local church, but also by other churches and some individuals who send money to me every single month so that I don't have to work at Aldi or deliver pizzas or something. I can just spend my full time working in sharing the gospel with other people. You can send directly to other needy brethren. In Matthew chapter 25, you remember when Jesus is dividing people, and one of the reasons why he divides people, he said, you are people who saw me hungry or naked or in prison, and you visited me, you clothed me, and you fed me. And you're like, when did we see you doing this? And he said, well, if you did this to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. And those are the types of people that are going to be entered into the kingdom, or those who are generous with their food, with their clothes, and with their time, helping other needy brethren. That those are not just an option for which we can be generous, but I would say a necessity. You also are to be helpful to other people beyond just those who are Christians. James chapter 1, verse 27, pure and undefiled religion in the sight of God and Father is this, to care for the orphan and the widow, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. Orphan and widow, there are certainly people who fit into this category, but the verse is really about people who are less fortunate than you are, people who can't take care of themselves. You're supposed to do good for all of those types of people. And that's what Galatians chapter 6, verse 10 says. We're to do good to all people, especially those of the household of faith. So when I look at what percentage am I going to be giving, not all of it has to go to the collection plate. I would say that some of it must go elsewhere. And the fourth option, you may have a favorite charity of something that you believe is a good in this world. You may have someone who died of heart disease and you really care about heart disease being cured and you want to donate to a charity that works to find better solutions for heart disease, or childhood cancer, and there's a hospital that you really like supporting for that. Or my favorite charity is one that helps fund adoptions into Christian homes and finding a way to do good in the world. Those are all ways that we can be generous with the possessions that God gives us. With that said, let's go into some of these principles. We've got 4 different big overarching principles, 4 different categories. The first one that we're going to talk about is how giving is good for me. When I am generous, it is good for me that I become a better person and more like Jesus when I am someone who is a giving person. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 6, it says the point is this: the person who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. The person who sows generously will also reap generously. Earlier this week, my neighbor, the guy who has the nicest yard in the whole street, he was out for hours, it looked like, spreading grass seed on his already nicest yard on the street. When you have this idea of sowing generously, the idea of throwing lots of seed on the ground, the more seed that you throw, the more grass you're going to have grow. This idea in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 is applied to our generosity. The more you give, the more you receive. The more you spread your seed, the more you share the blessings that God has given to you, the more you will be blessed. Now, this is not in a health and wealth gospel type of way. There are churches out there that say, hey, if you send me $20, you will magically come into $2,000. As in, this is a way to get rich in this world is by being generous. It is a way to get rich, but not in that way. When in Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, when it says, when you give, you need to do it in a way not to be seen by men. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward with your Father in heaven. So when you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites in the synagogues and on the streets, to be applauded by people. Truly, they will have their reward. When you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. The reward that we get may not be financial. God certainly makes sure that we have what we need financially. He's going to make sure that we're taken care of. But the reward that we get may not be in financial, but it will be in character. The more you give, the better person you become, the more like Jesus you become. I forgot that I had pasted that on a slide, but there it is. Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. When you give in secret, your Father who sees in secret will reward you in the ways, spiritual blessings that are far beyond the blessings that come from just having more money. When you give, it helps you practice to help keep you free from the love of money. We know that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. We don't want to fall into that snare. How do you avoid falling into the love of money? In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 17 through 19, starting in verse 17, he says to Timothy, Paul says, Timothy, you need to talk to the rich people among you. You instruct those who are rich in the present age not to be arrogant or to set their hope on the uncertainty of wealth, but on God who richly provides us with all things to enjoy. We'll pause there for a second. Riches are certainly something that people trust in. I have a bank account, therefore I am secure. I don't have to worry about if I'm going to eat tomorrow or not, because I have lots of stuff. I have lots of possessions, and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be taken care of. Just like that rich fool, though, everything could be gone in an hour and in a night, and I could either die or all of my possessions could be taken away. I could lose my house in a fire. I could lose my bank account to a recession, or business deals going bad, or through lawsuits. Who knows? There are lots of ways to lose money in this world, and they can all be gone. Riches are uncertainty. They're not something to trust in. Instead, when we are generous, you continue in verse 18 and 19, instruct them to do what is good, to be rich in good works, to be generous, willing to share. Storing up treasures for themselves is a good foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of what is truly life. You think you have life because you are rich in this life? You don't even know what life is. What is truly life is going to be the life to come. And even you can have a taste of what true life is when you live like Jesus would live in your place. That is a life that is worth living, a life that is generous, a life that is serving others. We need to be rich, not necessarily in possessions, but be rich in good works. That is what makes us more like Jesus. We need to train our hearts to be in the right place. In Matthew chapter 6, it says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. How do I get my heart be in heaven? How do I want my heart set on heavenly things? Well, I need to practice into where that becomes where my treasure is. If I am stuck with the uncertainty of riches, because it is deceiving, my need to practice being generous with others. That is what Jesus suggests to the rich young ruler. His problem was the love of money. And Jesus' suggestion to him was to sell what he had and come and follow Jesus. That's what he needed. He needed his heart to be treasured in the better place. Opportunities to give is a reason why we should work hard. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28 is a very interesting verse. Paul is telling them that the thief shouldn't steal any longer. Well, of course. Don't be a thief. Don't take from others. But instead, you need to do honest work. He needs to do honest work with his own hands so that he can provide for himself and his family. Well, that may be true, but that's not what the verse says. The verse says, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. The reason why I work and the reason that I work hard isn't just to take care of myself and have my own possessions and take care of my family. The reason that I should work hard is so that I can have more to help those who are unable to work, unable to take care of themselves, those who are in need. So that's the first principle, is that giving is good for me. Second principle is that when I give, I should be giving myself first to the Lord. And when I give myself first to the Lord, giving to others becomes much easier. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 1 through 5, we're going to see this pop up. When Paul talks about giving, it's usually attached to this project that Paul has. That the church in Jerusalem was going to be experiencing a famine. And they had already given up a lot of their possessions, a lot of their savings to help feed needy Christians. So now they don't have savings. They don't have possessions to be able to withstand a famine. Paul is going around to Gentile churches, collecting money and taking it back to Jerusalem so that those needy Christians in Jerusalem can be fed. Not only is it good just to feed them, but it's also going to help mend some Jewish-Gentile rifts that have happened. So when Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 says, we want you to know, brothers and sisters, about the grace of God that was given to the churches of Macedonia, Paul's writing to Corinth, telling them about the generosity of some other churches from Macedonia. It says, verse 2, during a severe trial brought by affliction, their abundant joy and their extreme poverty overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. I can testify that according to their ability, and even beyond their ability, of their own accord, they begged us earnestly for the privilege of sharing in the ministry to the saints, and not just as we had hoped. Instead, they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then to us by God's will. Hey, Levi, could you go get my water off of the back desk back there for me? Thank you. These people in Macedonia were extremely impoverished and they were undergoing affliction, but they begged Paul to let us, thank you, sir. They begged Paul to let them share in this generosity with the church in Jerusalem. Even in, as it says, extreme poverty, their generosity overflowed. If you were extremely impoverished, what would make you want to give what you do have to other people? It says in verse 5, they gave themselves first to the Lord and then to us by God's will. When they saw everything that they have is belonging to God anyway, and they see a need, it was easy to share those blessings. When I give myself to God, sharing with others becomes easy. When I look at my possessions in a certain way as not my own, but me being as a steward, that gets much easier. God owns everything. Everything that I have, my car, my house, my stuff in my bank account, stuff in my refrigerator, God made it all. It all belongs to Him. God owns everything, and I am only a steward, a caretaker, a servant who has been entrusted with it for a short time. In 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verses 12 through 17, is an amazing passage. This is one of the last things that we have recorded that is spoken by David, right before Solomon is anointed as king and right before David dies. Here's what David says. Riches and honor come from you, and you are the ruler of everything. Power and might are in your hand, and it is in your hand to make great and to give strength to all. Now, therefore, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name. But who am I, and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? For everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your own hand. For we are aliens and temporary residents in your presence, as were our ancestors. Our days on earth are like a shadow, without hope. Lord, our God, all this wealth that we provided for building you a house for your holy name comes from your hand. Everything belongs to you. I know, my God, that you test the heart and that you are pleased with what is right. I've willingly given all these things with an upright heart, and now I have seen your people who are present here giving joyfully and willingly to you. That whatever we give to God, it belongs to Him already. Whatever we give to those who are needy in the world, in a way, it doesn't belong to us in the first place. God owns everything, and we're only stewards. And as stewards, we can choose what to do with our money. In Acts chapter 5, verse 4, you have that story of Ananias and Sapphira, and they lied and said that they gave this much. They gave everything that the land was worth when they kept back part of it. And Peter says, wasn't it yours while you possessed it? And after it sold, wasn't it at your disposal? Why is it that you have planned this thing in your heart and you have not lied to people, but to God? The stuff in my bank account, I have authority on how to spend it. God gave it to me, but I have the responsibility of making decisions on where that money goes because He has given me stewardship of it. That includes providing for my family. That includes saving for the rainy day, for the emergencies that may come up, as well as investing for retirement in the future. Those are all smart things to do. But just like that man with the barns, and if I put all of my stuff into what ifs in the future, there are far more passages warning against hoarding money, far more for every verse that there is about saving money, there are far more about do not hoard money. Be generous with what you have, and God will make sure that your needs are taken care of. And as a steward, I will be held accountable for my stewardship. Whatever I spend my money on, I'm going to be held accountable for that. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2, this is talking about stewardship of the gospel itself, but it certainly applies to the possessions that God gives us. Let a man so consider us as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. The primary responsibility of someone who has been entrusted with someone else's money is that they are faithful with it. And I need to be faithful with what God has given to me. And if I know that He wants me to be generous and to share with others, that is on me to make sure that I do it. Remember in the parable of the talents that the rich man gave one man 5 talents, another 3 talents, and 1 talent, or 2 talents, 5, 2, and 1. And he gave them these talents, and he expected them to use that money. They had the choice of how to use it, but he expected something in return. Everything that God has given to me, He expects me to use it for His glory. That doesn't mean I can't use some of it for enjoyment, to go out to eat with my family or with friends or other Christians, or go to the movies and enjoy life with the possessions that He gives me. But if that's all I'm doing with it, and I'm not sharing and I'm not putting it to His use, then I will be held accountable for that stewardship just as much as the 1 talent man who buried it in the sand. Here's the principle. I know that giving pleases God. When I share with others, it makes God happy. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 16. Don't neglect to do what is good and to share, for God is pleased with such sacrifices. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9 says that we should make it our aim, whether we're dead, we're alive, we're awake, we're asleep, no matter where we are, our aim should be to be pleasing to God. I want to make God happy. I want to make God smile. When I consider all he's done for me, I want to please him. And I know that sharing what he has blessed me with pleases him. He is pleased with that kind of sacrifices. I want to be pleasing to God. When you look at the story of the parable of the Good Samaritan, we don't have time to go through that whole parable again, but if you remember, what was the attitude of the robbers? The robbers' attitude towards possession is, what's yours is mine, and I'm going to take it from you. They were motivated by greed. The Levite and the priest, they said, what is mine, and I'm going to keep it. They saw the man who was in great need, but they walked on the other side of the road because I'm not going to share what God has given to me with this guy over here, because God gave it to me and it's mine, and I'm going to keep it and I'm going to use it for myself. But the Samaritan, when he saw the man who was hurt and injured, he had a different attitude towards possessions. He said, what's mine is God, and I'm going to use it for his glory. So those are the first two principles, that giving is good for me, and that when I give myself to the Lord, that giving to others becomes easier. How much should I give? Well, the answer is that I must give as I prosper. Sounds like a non-answer, doesn't it? But this is the principle that God has given us. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 1 through 4, this is the verse that's often read before we pass out the collection plates. Here's an example of Paul doing that exact same thing. He's taking up a collection to send money to the needy saints in Jerusalem. And he says, now about the collection for the saints, those needy saints in Jerusalem, do the same as I instructed the Galatian churches. On the first day of the week, each of you is to set something aside and save in keeping in how he is prospering, so that no collections will need to be made when I come. When I arrive, I will send with letters those you recommend to carry your gift to Jerusalem. If it is suitable for me to go as well, they will travel with me. Paul said, I don't. When I get there, I don't need to pass around the hat. Wait until then to collect the money to send to Jerusalem. The need is there now. I'm going to be coming, and you guys go ahead. On the first day of every week, you take up a collection so that that money will be ready to go to Jerusalem. How are they to give? How much should they give? Paul says, save in keeping with how he is prospering. He expects those who are prospering well, those who are rich, have a larger income, to give more than those who have a lesser income, who are not prospering as well. Someone who is already undergoing a hardship and they haven't been able to work because they've been sick or they've been injured and they don't have an income and the church is already helping them, then that person doesn't need to give. But the person who is prospering a lot, that person is expected to give as he is prospering. So that leads to the next question of how much am I prospering? I need to consider how financially blessed I am compared to others in the world. Not necessarily others who live very comfortably in Jackson, Missouri, with air condition and everything else that this country affords, but how blessed am I compared to others in the world who do not have, aren't nearly as blessed just to live in this country that we live in? How financially blessed am I compared to others in the world? And consider how much I spend on needs and wants. And if I have room in what I spend month to month, if I don't have anything left over, where I can cut back so that I can increase that percentage of what I give, not necessarily to the church, but to others who are in need, who are around the world. When considering each other, in giving to Christians, and not just Christians that are here, but Christians who are around the world, our aim would be for equality. Not equality as in everybody must make the exact same amount every month, but equality in their needs being satisfied. In Acts chapter 4, you have Christians from all over the world that had come to Jerusalem. They were planning on going back home, but they learned the gospel and they stay an extra long amount of time. In Acts chapter 4, you have this attitude that the entire group of those who believed were of one heart and mind. No one claimed that any of his possessions were his own, but instead they held everything in common. With great power, the apostles were giving testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great grace was on all of them, for there was not a needy person among them, because all those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the proceeds that were sold, and laid them at the apostles' feet. This was then distributed to each person as any had need. And Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus by birth, which was the apostles called Barnabas, which is translated son of encouragement, sold a field he owned, brought the money, and laid it at the apostles' feet. These people sold their land to make sure that other Christians had what they need. If the need arose, I would empty my 401k for other Christians who had need. And that we should have that type of love for each other to make sure that all the Christians here locally certainly have what they need, but also aim to help others who are abroad as well. The last way that we can answer this question, how much should I give? This last principle is that it must be willingly and purposefully. When I give, I need to give freely, that I am happy to give, and with purpose. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 7 through 10, you have this statement. Each person should do as he has decided in his heart. This is a premeditated giving. As you have already decided and purposed, each person should do as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or out of compulsion, since God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make every grace overflow to you, so that in every way, always having everything you need, you may excel in every good work. As it is written, he distributed freely, he gave to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. Now the one who provides seed for the sower and bread for her food will also provide and multiply your seed and increase harvest of your righteousness. Realize that I misread verse 10. But that God will provide you your needs. That's a given. So when you give, you don't need to be reluctant, and you need to be happy and joyful in the way that you give. How you do that is by planning ahead of time. How do I decide in my heart if it is just a spur of the moment thing? It is something that should be decided ahead of time. So what we need to do is to budget our giving. Make a pre-plan on how I am going to give. In the Old Testament, when you were to give to God, either through sacrifice or to the Levites or to the priests, they were always told to give their first fruits, their best. And when it is the first fruit, it is a non-negotiable. When you're writing out your monthly budget, I'm not saying that giving to the church must be the absolute first line on the budget, but it does need to be the last place you cut. If I have an emergency this month, I need new tires on my vehicle, my transmission blows, and I've got to cut way, way back on other spending so that I can take care of this need. If I say, well, I can't give as much to church, but I'm still eating out as much as I am, and I'm still paying for Netflix for the next month, year, or whatever, or I'm still going to the movies and if giving is the first place where I cut, then I would suggest that giving is not your first fruits. Where you give, whatever you purpose in your heart, that needs to be the last place that is cut if there is a need that pops up in your house. If you're just giving God leftovers, He's not really interested in leftovers. He's never been interested in leftovers. He wants your heart first. And when my heart belongs to God first, then I need to be generous. I'm not just talking about collection plate. I'm talking about how I help other people. And when it is budgeted, when I've already made a decision in my heart that this week, I, I don't know, again, I don't know who gives what, but say I give $100 this week to the collection plate. But I also budget $75 a week to give to preachers, needy brethren, people out in the world, or to my favorite charity. I know I've got $75 and I already treat it like it doesn't belong to me. It becomes fun money, that it's enjoyable to give. That when I see the guy on the street with a sign, I may choose to give to him, or I may choose to give to my favorite charity, or I may choose to send it to Steve Walker. He was the guy that was in our gospel meeting last year, and he goes to Africa all the time, and he has Christians, and he's actually set up his own charity that you can donate to that sends food directly to Christians in Africa, or he can tell you of preachers in Africa that certainly need monthly support. And he sends out an email saying, here's a brand new medical need that's popped up from a sister in Zimbabwe. Having already in my mind, I've got $75 to play with this week of some way that I can be good to someone else, then I don't have to treat it like I'm begrudging it. I can give willingly and I can give cheerfully when I already treat it like it doesn't belong to me. That this is money that God has blessed me with, that I can have fun blessing others with. When you budget, it becomes enjoyable to give. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5 is the last verse for the morning. We're told to keep your life free from the love of money. Be satisfied with what you have, for he himself has said, I will never leave you nor abandon you. Jesus himself said that it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. That we know that God will take care of our needs. So to this question of how much should I give? The Bible doesn't tell you a straight number or a straight percentage under the New Testament. But we do need to consider the principles that God has given us. That I know that giving is good for me. And if I give myself first to the Lord, then sharing blessings with others is easy. I need to consider how much I need and how much I spend on my own wants. And if there's a way that I can be generous. And when I consider how much God has prospered me, I need to bless others. And finally, I need to be purposeful and willing in my giving. And I need to budget my giving. That when I see that this money that I have, that I get to bless others with, that it is a fun thing for me and it makes me more like Jesus. You would take out your songbook to turn number 270. That's an invitation song. We'll end this lesson the same way that we always do. If there is someone here who knows that they need to make a change in their life or ask for prayers of the congregation or to be baptized into Christ, all those opportunities are available for you, not just now, but as long as you have breath. But if you know that you have a need right now, we ask you to make that decision today. We ask you to come to the front as we stand and as we sing. Our Father above, oh, precious to him as our love, be with you. Faithfully trust me. Give me thy heart. It's all whisper wherever thou art. This our world shall be apart. Speaking so tenderly, give me thy heart. falling in mirth and from sin from evil depart. Have I not died for thee? Give me thy heart. Give me thy heart. Lord, hear the soft whisper wherever thou art. This dark world, he could draw thee apart. Keep me all tenderly in thy heart, and the Spirit divine. All that thou hast, thy keeping resign. For around is mine to heart, and full surrender. Give me thy heart.